Hi, my name is Ray Fuentes. I'm the Red Shoe Broker, and I am a big believer in checklists. I particularly like them if I don't have to create them. Here we have a checklist for a real estate transaction. It's the timeline of key events in a transaction using the California Residential Purchase Agreement, and it's created by Car Legal. Now, every now and then it gets updated because there are some changes in the purchase agreement, but for now, this one is accurate. Here's how it works. So it represents a time period, what the buyer's supposed to do, and what the seller's supposed to do in this time period. So you have an offer, it's accepted, and then you within 3 days, the buyer has to put in the EMD, earnest money deposit. If they don't, the seller can give a notice to perform. That's how it works. On 7 days, the seller is supposed to deliver the disclosures to the buyer on the 7th calendar day. If the seller does not, the buyer can give the seller notice to perform. So here's a document created by Car Legal that tells you what's supposed to happen on the default days of a purchase agreement. I thought this was so cool that I created an Excel spreadsheet that actually puts the dates into the calendar on the Excel spreadsheet. And if someone changes let's say the inspection period from 17 days to 14, you can change that and it still gives you the correct date. If you didn't know, if the deadline ends on a weekend or a holiday, this is per the purchase agreement, then the actual due date is the following business day. So for example, let's say the seller's disclosures are due and the due date is Saturday. Well, they don't have to provide them on Saturday. They don't have to provide them on Sunday. They have to provide them on Monday because Monday's not a holiday. So they get a couple extra days to do that. Now, if you're the seller, that might not be such a big deal. If you're a seller and the buyer is supposed to do something on a weekend, like remove their contingencies on a Saturday, they don't have to do that until the next business day. So as an agent, you should know what days things are supposed to happen. And here's a spreadsheet that's going to show us how to do that. So let's take a quick look here. This is the timeline of key events for a transaction. When you use this, what I'd like you to do is save it and then make a copy of the whole thing under the name of the property. So for example, let's say hypothetically the address is 123 Happy Hollow. Oops, I can spell this. Then what I'd like you to do is save the file, go to up here, go to File, save a copy, and save it as 123 Happy Hollow timeline. That way you know which one it is. And you don't have to, you can just reuse the same original template. So you're going to see that there's some weird dates in here. These are just some standard dates that are in the purchase agreement, or at least the ones I want to use. So I like for the buyers to provide proof of funds when they submit an offer. And I also want to see the pre-approval letter. So you'll see it say 0, but according to the purchase agreement, it's actually 3. But for me, I like the 0. You're going to notice there's some weird stuff going on here. Don't worry about it. It's all based on these dates. So let's start with the seller template. It's a little easier to use. So on the seller template, you've been hired to list the property. You have a listing agreement. So this is completed, right? So go ahead and write in complete. Yeah. Do you order the preliminary title report? Do you order the natural hazards disclosure? Sure. Once you do that, put that it's complete. Complete the transfer disclosure statement and the seller's property questionnaire. Sure. Do that anytime, and once it's done, put complete. By default, some of these items should be done by the 7th day because they have to be provided to the buyer by the 7th day. The statement of information That is what escrow needs for the seller, in case they have a very common name like John Smith, to confirm that it is in fact John Smith. So once you have that, you talk to your escrow officer, they'll get you the form or they'll send it to your client. You should just make sure that it's completed. If you're going to do any prepaid inspections or reports, do those up front. If not, just ignore it. Now here's where we get into the actual form. So what is the acceptance date? Let's just pretend that today's the 8th of July. Let's say I write an offer, full price offer on a property for my client, and the seller sees it today and they agree to it tomorrow. So they sign the document July 9th. So I'm going to put in next to the acceptance date here, I'm going to put in 7/9. And you'll notice that everything starts filling in. Now here we go for all these items. And let's just say by default, you're going to take a 30-day close of escrow. That's what a lot of agents do. They often don't look at a calendar. I'm going to pick 30 days. But wait, it says August 10th. Well, I know July has 31 days, but shouldn't it be another day? I don't know. Let's take a look at a calendar. So we look, let's see what August, well, look at that. It should have been August 8th, but because August 8th is a Saturday, what it did was the Excel spreadsheet added 2 days for that Monday for you. If it were to fall on a Sunday, it would add 1 day. Unfortunately, I don't have it set up right now so that if that day lands on a holiday, it puts it to the next business day. So you're just going to have to know holidays. But that's how it works. It's pretty simple. So they've reviewed, your seller and you have reviewed the contract. You scheduled the close of escrow because it's 30 days. Now, days after acceptance, we want to make the property available immediately. That's the very first thing. The buyer submits the deposit. They have 3 days to do that. They have a pre-approval letter. They have 3 days to do that. And the proof of funds is 3 days. You'll notice up here, there's a free line on the seller side. If that's done, just put an X in there. Means it's done. Or yes. Or completed. Right? Whatever. Whatever you want to put in there, you can, just to show that it's done. But the idea is you know the dates that things are due. If hypothetically, you represent the seller and the buyer has said that they will complete their inspections in 14 days, so where it says inspections completed, put 14. If it says buyer returns, that's 14 days also. But if the loan contingency isn't changed, then you have to leave that at 21. By the way, if these days fall on a weekend, they change to the following Monday. So let's take a look at what happens just before close of escrow. 5 days before close of escrow, if it's a tenant-owned occupied property, then it has to be vacated. But this might not be applicable. If on 5 days before, the seller repair should be completed. The buyer does the walkthrough or verification of property condition 5 days before. Now, the signing of the documents can vary. You're going to have to talk to your escrow officer. By default, I said 3 days before close of escrow. The close of escrow date is here, and the seller receives the funds that very next day. So that's how the seller part works. The buyer side is very similar, but there are a couple of changes. First off, I want to point out that they should find you the realtor completed, but you should use what's called a broker-buyer agreement, but the correct term is buyer representation agreement. You should be using those. Once you have all these things completed, you can mark completed or put the date in. Today happens to be Wednesday. My buyer, let's say hypothetically, wants to look at property on Saturday. So I'm going to give them a specific time to get that pre-approval, which is Friday, before we go. right? I want to see proof of funds. We need to get the pre-approval letter. And here we go. I'm just going to make all that stuff available before we go showing property on Saturday. Saturday is the 11th. Let's put that the offer is accepted on the 12th. And then we're going to put in 30 days. Buyer provides proof of funds. If you've done that already, great. If not, make sure you do it by the 3rd day. And again, all these things are supposed to fill out automatically. Something's missing here. There we go. So it's supposed to close in 30 days on the 11th. Here we go. There we go. Now, one of the things that's a little bit different in here, well, first off, again, if you put in 30 days, it'll be 30 days. If you put in 45, it'll adjust everything correctly. However, if you were to look at a calendar beforehand, because you know Thanksgiving's coming up or some holiday, you can actually just type in the date and leave this blank, and that's okay too. A couple of changes for a buyer is we still have the close of escrow date. And unless there's a rent back, they should receive their keys that day. So if there is a rent back, let's say for a week, you're going to change this, right? Before you give it to your client. And they can move in technically the day after closing, but really it's the day after this. So let's say the seller wants to stay in the house for 3 days. I'm just going to add 3 days to the 11th, make that the 14th. There we go. And then I'm going to change this one to the same day. There we go. That's it. That's how the form is used. Feel free to call me with any questions. My name is Ray Fuentes. I'm the Red Shoe Broker. My number is 916-919-1377. Or you can email me, ray@rayfuentes.com. I'm more than happy to help. Broker Ray out.